When he said, "Trust me," it sounded like a promise. Back then, I believed promises meant something. He had that kind of voice. Low, steady, the kind that made lies sound like lullabies. Every night he'd call, half asleep, talking about our future like it was already written. Next year, he'd say, "We'll get our own place. No more long drives. No more missing each other." And I believed him. God, I believed him. We'd been together 2 years by then. Not a perfect 2 years, but the kind you defend to your friends anyway. The kind where you say, "He's just tired," when he's distant. Or, "He's under pressure," when he snaps. I used to think trust meant overlooking small hurts to protect something bigger. It was a Thursday when everything shifted. Nothing special about it. Just another long workday, traffic, and leftover pasta waiting in the fridge. He was supposed to come over later. Said he had a surprise. That word used to make me nervous in a good way. Around 6, I went to grab a sweater from the coat closet, the one he always used when he stayed over. His jacket was hanging there, still heavy from the rain. Out of habit, I checked the pockets, looking for his car keys. Instead, my fingers hit something hard, a small velvet box. I froze. You know how your body knows before your mind does? That cold rush that starts in your chest and spreads everywhere? That's what it felt like. I didn't even open it right away. I just stood there, staring at the box in my hand, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. When I finally lifted the lid, it clicked open like a secret being let out. Inside was a ring, simple but beautiful. Gold band, small diamond, the kind of ring that means something. For a second, I smiled. My brain went straight to us. Maybe he was serious about everything he'd been saying. Maybe this was the moment he'd been planning. Then I saw it. A folded piece of paper tucked under the ring cushion. Not even hidden, just there, waiting. I pulled it out and unfolded it. For C, just that. 2 words, but it was enough to change everything. My name doesn't start with C. I stood there for a long time, staring at the note, trying to think of some explanation. A friend? A family member? A coworker? Maybe he was helping someone else buy a ring. That's the story I told myself. The kind people tell when they need to breathe. But deep down, something cracked open in me. Something small and sharp that had been waiting a long time. That night, he arrived right on time. Flowers in one hand, grin in the other. "Hey," he said, kissing my forehead. "Missed you." My throat tightened around the words I wanted to say. "Who's C?" But instead I smiled. "Missed you too." Dinner felt strange. He talked a lot. About work. About his brother. About the surprise he still wouldn't tell me about. His eyes kept darting to the coat closet, and every time, my stomach flipped. When he left the table to take a call, I stared at his plate, the half-eaten pasta, the way his fork was still resting on the edge like he'd come right back. That's when I knew. I didn't have the whole truth yet, but my body did. Later that night, I watched him slip on that same jacket. My jacket now, at least for the moment, still held the weight of the ring box he didn't know I'd seen. He kissed me goodnight at the door, said, "Trust me, okay?" And I nodded, even though something inside me whispered, "Not anymore." When the door closed, the silence was loud. I sat on the couch holding my phone, staring at his contact photo, his smile, his messy hair, that familiar warmth that now looked like fiction. I thought about all the little moments that suddenly felt suspicious. The late replies, the changed passwords, the way he'd flinch when I reached for his phone, and then I thought about the ring again, about the small note under it with that single letter. See, the world doesn't fall apart all at once. It unravels thread by thread, truth by truth. That night, I didn't cry. I just sat there quiet, with the ring box in my lap and my heart in my throat, realizing that the person I trusted most had built an entire story on a foundation of lies, and the worst part wasn't even the betrayal. It was that I still wanted there to be another explanation. That's what love does before it breaks. It bargains with the truth. I told myself I'd wait, that I wouldn't assume anything until I knew for sure. But somewhere deep down, I already did. Because when someone says, "Trust me," and you have to remind yourself to believe it, the truth has already started to show. After that night, nothing felt the same. Not even the silence. It had weight now, pressing against me every time he wasn't around. The next morning, I woke up to his usual, "Good morning, beautiful" text. Only this time, instead of smiling, I stared at it until the words blurred. It was the same message he sent every day, the one I used to screenshot and save. But now it felt copied, practiced, like something he'd said before, maybe to someone else too. That single letter, C, haunted me. It wasn't even a name, but it was enough to twist every moment into suspicion. I tried to be normal. I told myself not to overthink, not to ruin something just because I was scared. But fear doesn't listen to reason. It builds its own logic. Every text he sent after that felt like a code. Every pause in conversation became a test. Every time he said, "You're overthinking," it felt like proof that I wasn't. I started watching him differently. His tone, his expressions, the way he typed. Once, when we were sitting on the couch and his phone buzzed, he tilted the screen away so quickly I almost laughed. Almost. "Who's that?" I asked. He looked up, eyebrows raised. "Seriously? You're starting this again?" I just asked. He sighed. "It's work, okay? You know, the thing I actually have to do to afford your favorite takeout." That's how it began. Tiny accusations flipped until I was the one apologizing. Gaslighting doesn't start with screaming. It starts with, "You're imagining things." And when you love someone, that's the most believable lie. Soon, I couldn't trust my own instincts. He'd cancel plans last minute and call it exhaustion. He'd come home smelling like cologne I didn't own. He'd leave his phone face down on the table, then smile like I was crazy for noticing. One night, I asked again, gently, carefully, "Have you been talking to anyone else?" He laughed. Actually laughed. "Wow," he said, shaking his head. "You really don't trust me at all, do you?" My throat tightened. "It's not that, It's exactly that," he cut in. "You're so insecure you can't even believe I love you." And there it was. The shift. The moment when guilt replaces anger. When you start saying sorry for wanting clarity. After that, I stopped asking. I told myself I didn't want to push him away, but inside I was shrinking. I used to love staying at his apartment. We'd make popcorn and watch movies until we fell asleep. But now, every corner of that place felt like a lie. I'd catch myself looking for signs. A hairbrush that wasn't mine, an earring on the floor, perfume in the air that didn't belong. And when I didn't find anything, I almost felt worse. Because it made me doubt myself more. Maybe I was paranoid. Maybe I was losing it. One evening, I overheard him talking in the kitchen. Low voice, short sentences. He hung up as soon as I walked in. "Who was that?" I asked. He smirked. "You really can't help yourself, can you?" I froze. "Do you even hear yourself anymore?" He said, his voice quieter now, colder. "It's exhausting, constantly being accused of things I didn't do." I wanted to fight back, to tell him what I'd found, to hold up that little note and scream. But I couldn't. Because then I'd have to admit I went through his things, so I said nothing, and he walked away like he'd won something. That's how control works. It doesn't need chains. Just confusion, silence, and love used as a weapon. The days blurred after that. I barely ate. My messages got shorter. I told my friends I was fine because how do you explain this kind of slow unraveling? It's not a breakup. It's erosion. He'd still say I love you, still bring coffee in the morning, still touch my cheek like nothing had changed. And yet, every gesture felt rehearsed. A performance for a woman who was starting to disappear inside her own head. I started second-guessing everything. My memory, my emotions, my version of events. Once, I even apologized to him for making him feel accused. He smiled, pulled me close, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "See? That's the girl I fell in love with, but that girl was fading." The next time his phone lit up, I didn't look away. I just watched as he read the message, smiled to himself, and turned the screen over again. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. Because by then, the silence between us said more than words ever could, and yet, deep down, something in me still refused to break. There was a small voice, quiet but stubborn, whispering that I wasn't crazy. I just didn't know yet how right that voice was. Because the truth, the real truth, was already hiding in plain sight. I just hadn't looked in the right place. Not yet. It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of quiet day that doesn't prepare you for heartbreak. He'd gone out early, said he needed to run a few errands. I didn't ask what kind. I was too tired of hearing my own doubts bounce back at me. But when I walked into the kitchen later, I saw his jacket draped over the chair, the same one he'd worn the night I found the ring box. Something in me froze. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't even thinking about the ring anymore. But when I picked up the jacket to hang it, a folded receipt slipped out of the pocket and fell to the floor. I stared at it for a full minute before picking it up. It was from a jewelry store, Harper & Lane Fine Jewelers, dated 2 days before the night he told me he was working late. My heart stuttered when I saw the purchase description. Custom engagement ring, platinum setting, size 6. I wasn't a size 6, I was a 7. It was such a small detail, but it cracked something inside me wide open. The world went quiet. I just stood there, staring at that little white slip like it held a verdict. I tried to make sense of it. Maybe he bought it for someone else to see what I'd like. Maybe it was a surprise for me, and he'd mixed up the sizes. I wanted to believe that. God, I wanted to. But I couldn't ignore the signature on the bottom, the one that said to be picked up by C. Mendez. The same letter, the same initial from the note I'd found weeks ago. C. I sat down on the cold tile floor, gripping that paper until it crumpled. He'd looked me in the eye and said, "Trust me," over and over again. He made me doubt my own instincts, my sanity, my worth. And now, a single piece of paper made it all real. He wasn't buying the ring for me. He was buying it for her. I felt every everything at once: grief, anger, humiliation. Mostly humiliation, because I'd defended him to everyone. I'd believed him when he said I was the only one. I don't remember how long I sat there, but when my phone buzzed, I jumped. It was a message from him. "Running late again, babe. Don't wait up. Love you." I stared at the screen and realized those words had become meaningless. They were just sounds he made to keep me soft. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every moment, every excuse, every "you're paranoid," every time he made me feel small for noticing. I opened my laptop and typed Harper and Lane into the search bar. My fingers were trembling. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I found it anyway. Their website had a contact page with a number. I called. "Hi," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm calling about an order placed a few days ago. A custom ring under the name Daniel Cole." The woman on the other end clicked a few keys. "Yes, I see it here. Scheduled for pickup tomorrow. Do you need to make any changes to the engraving?" "Engraving?" I repeated. "Yes, it says Forever C&D. Should I leave it as is?" My throat closed. I couldn't breathe. Yes, I managed. "That's fine." I hung up before she could say anything else. The room spun around me. C&D, CEO her. D&M, he hadn't just lied. He'd promised someone else forever. I sat there in the dark, trying to process the enormity of it all. It wasn't just betrayal. It was erasure, as if our love story had been rewritten in real time, and I was being edited out. My chest felt hollow. But under all that pain, something else started to grow. Something colder, sharper, clarity. He'd said, "Trust me," and I did. But now I knew better. Trust wasn't the problem. He was. I decided not to confront him right away. I wanted to see how far he'd go, how easily he'd lie while the truth sat right there in my pocket. The next evening, he came home with flowers. Lilies, my favorite. He kissed my cheek, smiling like a man with nothing to hide. "Rough day?" he asked, brushing a strand of hair from my face. I forced a smile. "You could say that." He laughed softly. "You worry too much, you know that?" And I nodded, because I did worry, just not for the reason he thought. Later that night, when he fell asleep beside me, I turned off the lights and stared at the ceiling. The receipt was hidden under my pillow. The proof, the truth. Tomorrow he'd go to pick up that ring, the one meant for C, and when he did, I'd be there. Not as the girl who trusted him, but as the woman who finally saw him for who he really was. Morning came heavy, thick with the kind of silence that carries an ending. He moved around the apartment like nothing was wrong, humming while he got dressed, whistling as he buttoned his shirt. I watched from the kitchen counter, holding my coffee, wondering if betrayal always looked this calm from the outside. He noticed me watching and smiled. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "You seem happy today," he grinned. "Big day at work. Might be out late again," I nodded. "Of course you will." I had already memorized the receipt, the store name, the time, the address. 11:00 a.m. He was going to pick up the ring. The ring that wasn't for me. He left around 10:30, kissed me on the forehead, and said, "Don't wait up." I didn't. I followed. When I pulled into the parking lot across from Harper and Lane, my heart pounded so loud it felt like it would shake the car apart. Through the glass windows, I could see him at the counter, smiling, leaning forward, laughing. The woman behind the counter slid a small white box toward him. He opened it, glanced down, and his whole face softened. That was when another figure appeared beside him. A woman. She was younger, polished with dark hair and the same letter on her necklace, a gold C. He turned to her, said something, and she laughed, touching his arm like she'd done it 100 times before. That was it. The image was burned into me. When he walked her to her car, holding the ring box like it was sacred, I got out of mine. My hands were trembling, but my mind had never been clearer. "Daniel," I called out. He froze mid-step, color draining from his face. "What are you—" "Go ahead," I said, nodding at the woman beside him. "Introduce us." C looked between us, confusion flickering in her eyes. "Who's she?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I laughed, the sound brittle and unfamiliar. "He probably told you I was crazy, or an ex. He's good at that." Her brows furrowed, and for a moment she didn't look so confident. "Let me guess," I continued. "He said trust is everything? That he's never felt like this before?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "Stop this." I stepped closer. "Oh, I will. Right after you tell her who the ring's for." He looked at C, desperate. "Don't listen to her, she's telling the truth," I cut in, holding up the crumpled receipt. "You signed this, Daniel." 2 days ago. I found it in your jacket." C turned to him, eyes narrowing. "You told me she was your cousin." He blinked, stunned. "What? Your cousin, Daniel? You said she was staying with you after a breakup." The air went still. He glanced between us, realizing both stories were collapsing at once. I felt something inside me shift, the fear that had once controlled me melting into something colder. "Cleaner. You made me doubt myself," I said quietly. You made me feel insane for noticing, for asking questions. You made me apologize for your lies. He shook his head. It's not what you think. I stepped closer, cutting him off. Then explain it. Explain the ring. Explain her. He opened his mouth again, but C was already backing away, clutching her purse. You're disgusting, she muttered, turning toward her car. Wait, C. He started, but I laughed. Go ahead, I said. Run after her. But don't worry. I'll make sure she knows everything you told me, too. Every word. He turned on me then, anger flickering through his embarrassment. You followed me? You went through my stuff? That's sick, you know that? And there it was, the switch. The last desperate reach for control. You lied, I said. You built 2 lives on promises and expected neither of us to notice. That's sick. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing. I didn't mean to hurt you, okay? Things just got complicated. Complicated, I repeated. That's what you call betrayal? He looked up, eyes pleading now. I love you. No, I said, shaking my head. You love being believed. You love control. For a moment, we just stood there. Him, sweating and small in the daylight, and me, finally outside the shadow of all his excuses. He tried to reach for my hand. I stepped back. You told me to trust you, I whispered. I did, and that was my mistake. Then I turned and walked away, leaving him standing in the parking lot with his box of promises. When I got home, I expected to feel shattered. But instead, I felt empty in the best way. The kind of empty that makes space for something new. Peace, maybe. Or just the quiet of finally being done. That night, he called. Twice. Then again. I didn't answer. But I did listen to the last voicemail he left. I messed up, he said, voice breaking. Please, I can fix this. He couldn't. He never could. Because this time, I wasn't looking for an apology. I was looking for myself again. The version of me he tried so hard to erase. And for the first time in months, I felt her coming back. The days that followed were quiet, deceptively so. He didn't come by. He didn't text. But his silence wasn't peace. It was fear. Fear that I'd tell someone what he'd done, and I did. At first, I only told one person, a friend who'd known us since the beginning. I sent her the photo I'd taken of the receipt, the messages, even the picture of him and C at the jewelry store. Her reply came fast. You're not crazy. You were just lied to by a professional. That message broke something open in me. Not pain this time, but relief. Because now someone else saw it too. Someone else knew. From there, the truth started to travel, quietly at first, then faster. Mutual friends stopped liking his posts. His co-workers, who used to comment under his pictures with me, went silent. The story was spreading, one screenshot at a time, but I wasn't finished. There was still one piece missing, the one that would make sure he never did this again. 3 weeks later, a photo popped up on social media. Daniel standing at a rooftop restaurant, arm around C. In her hand was the same ring. The caption read, "She said yes." I should have felt crushed. Instead, I smiled, because I knew something C didn't. Yet, I hadn't deleted our old messages. The ones where he told me he loved me, where he made plans with me, while he was designing her ring. The ones dated the same week he'd taken her to dinner. I could have posted them. I could have destroyed him in one viral thread, but I didn't. I wanted something better, something cleaner, so I sent the screenshots directly to her. No explanation, just timestamps and proof. For a while, there was nothing. Silence. Then, hours later, I saw her story go live. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. Ring emoji. Broken heart, no photo, no him. That's when I knew it was over. 2 days later, he called. I didn't answer, but I listened to the voicemail. Why would you do that? You ruined my life. His life. Not our life. Not her life. Just his. That told me everything about who he really was, but it didn't stop there. Apparently, she'd told her friends, and her friends told theirs. The story spread. Not because I wanted revenge, but because lies don't stay buried when 2 people start telling the truth. By the end of the week, his engagement post was gone. His profile was private. The mutual friends who once sided with him were now sending me quiet messages like, "Good for you," and "He had it coming." For the first time, I didn't feel like a victim in his story. I felt like the author of my own. And yet, what surprised me most wasn't the justice. It was how calm it felt. felt. There was no dramatic moment of victory, no explosion, just silence, peaceful, necessary silence. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. I stopped wondering who he was with. The air in my apartment felt lighter, cleaner. I could breathe again, but the real justice wasn't in what happened to him. It was in what stopped happening to me. No more walking on eggshells. No more apologizing for noticing the truth. No more questioning my reality just because someone wanted me to. He'd spent months making me believe that trusting him was love. But the truth? Trusting myself, that was love. Weeks later, I ran into him by accident. It was at a cafe near my office. He looked smaller somehow, older. When our eyes met, he froze, halfway through stirring his coffee. I nodded politely. That was all. He tried to smile. You look good, thanks, I said. I am. He hesitated like he wanted to say something else, but then he looked down. I'm sorry. For a moment, I just looked at him. This man who'd once made me feel like the world started and ended with his approval. I know, I said quietly. You always are, just never soon enough. And then I walked away. No yelling, no tears. Just the sound of my heels against the floor. Steady, final, mine. That was the real justice. Not watching him lose what he wanted, but watching myself finally walk away from what I never deserved. It's strange how quiet life becomes after the noise of betrayal fades. The first few mornings without him, I kept expecting the phone to buzz, expecting to hear that easy, practiced, "Good morning, beautiful." It never came, and I realized how many of my reflexes had belonged to someone else's routine. For a while, I thought the silence would hurt, but it didn't. It felt clean, like rinsing out something that had been sour for too long. The emptiness that used to scare me turned out to be space. Space to think, to breathe, to just exist without being watched for the wrong expression or tone. People asked me if I hated him. I didn't. Hate takes energy, and I'd already spent enough of mine trying to make sense of someone else's lies. What stayed with me wasn't anger, it was clarity. He didn't break me. He showed me where I'd been bending too much for too long. Looking back, I can see every red flag I tried to repaint. The way he turned questions into accusations. The way trust me became a leash. I used to think that believing someone was the highest form of love. Now I know the real strength is being able to believe yourself when everything in you is being told not to. There's this moment that still replays sometimes. The day I watched him walk out of that jewelry store with her. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever see. Now, I understand it was just the end of a story that needed to end. I had been living in a version of love that demanded I doubt myself to keep the peace. That isn't love, it's survival. In the months since, I've built new habits. I keep the windows open. I sleep across the whole bed. I make coffee the way I like it. Strong, a little bitter, completely honest. I've learned that peace doesn't come when someone finally treats you right. It comes when you stop waiting for them to. I've also learned that trust isn't a flaw. It's a gift. He didn't ruin that in me. He just proved that not everyone deserves it. Trusting him was the mistake. Trust itself, that quiet willingness to believe, is still mine. Every now and then, someone will ask me if I'd ever forgive him. And maybe in some small way I already have. Not because he earned it, but because carrying his betrayal any longer would mean keeping a piece of him with me. I don't want that. I still believe in love. I just believe in one that doesn't need proof. One that doesn't hide behind passwords and half-truths. One that feels like home, not like a test I can fail. When I think back to the girl who found the ring box, I wish I could tell her she isn't crazy, that the pit in her stomach is her body trying to save her. I wish I could tell her that someday she'll look at that same version of herself and see someone who was braver than she knew. Betrayal didn't break me. It stripped away everything that wasn't real. It left me with the parts that were, my instincts, my strength, my voice. And maybe that's the quietest kind of victory there is. Not winning against someone, but reclaiming the pieces of yourself they tried to keep. If I ever hear someone say, "Trust me" again, I'll smile. Because now I know what trust really costs. And I know that I can afford to give it, carefully, on my own terms. The ring he bought ended up somewhere I'll never see, but it doesn't matter. What I wear now, invisible but constant, is something he could never buy. The certainty that I am enough, even when no one else says it first.